Less than a month after the general elections, political parties are set for another election battle with 12 by-elections expected to be held on Wednesday in KwaZulu-Natal. These elections will be taking place in Umzumbe, uMvoti, Newcastle, uPhongola, kwaNongoma, Umzimkhulu and the Umzumbe Municipality. The majority will be held in Umzumbe Local Municipality on the south coast. Umzumbe made headlines following the resignation of 6 ANC councillors who joined the MK party that had been expelled by the ANC earlier this year for voting with the IFP and elected a new mayor. In Umzumkhulu, the by-election comes after the passing of the ward councillor. 72 voting stations are expected to open across all the wards. The IEC says whilst it's been criticised and accused by some political parties of rigging votes in the general elections, it's working closely with the police. To expand on this, we're joined now by IEC KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Electoral Officer uMvoti Masinga, who joins us now. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. These by-elections, of course, come on the back of the general elections. I know that part of what you've really had to do is a massive educational drive to really get communities to understand that the general elections and the by-elections are two separate events.
Absolutely, Mpo. Good evening to you and good evening to the viewers. You are correct. We have had to embark on a massive education campaign in the 12 wards that are affected in the province, just to bring awareness amongst communities that there is actually no link between these two elections. The by-election is as a result of a vacancy occurring at a municipal level, either because of a ward or a PR councillor who has either passed on, have been expelled by their party and automatically lose their membership of that party and the membership in council, or is because of a resignation by a councillor. And as you've correctly put it, we are where we are now because of the 10 councillors who have resigned their seats, 5 of them in Umzumbe and the 1 in each of the other municipalities that you've mentioned. And 1 is as a result of a death in Umzimkhulu and the other one as a result of a termination in Umzumbe. And we have had to do that education just to also indicate to people that we're not going to embark on a registration campaign for these by-elections because they happen on just back-to-back with the general election, and that would have confused voters. And there's quite a few other things that we've had to explain. For an example, we mark our left thumb with indelible ink in a general election, but because that ink is still fresh on people's thumbs, we are going to be using the right thumb in this by-election, but we will then revert back to our normal procedures from the July and August by-elections.
The voter management devices, I mean, that left people in queues, very frustrated. Some didn't even vote because of the frustrations they experienced. Now that you've had some experience with them, I mean, just over a month ago, what are some of the, how are you planning to ensure that the process is a lot smoother and not as frustrating as it was, as we saw in some provinces?
Maybe just to indicate, Paul, we have never had a problem with a VMD in a by-election. The challenge with the election is that you are not able to do a dry run that you would love to do, because to do a dry run, you need to get all 23 voting stations across the country switching on at the same time, whilst you have people on our online platforms checking their registration status. And that's something that is almost impossible to test in our environment. But for by-elections, we have never had an issue because, as you would imagine, it's only 72 stations in KwaZulu-Natal, when in a general election, we deal with close to 5,000 voting stations. So we are quite comfortable with the state of our VMDs at the moment. We will be using them to manage a process at a voting station, but we will also be using it as a live voters roll, where we are able to scan somebody and be able to get those statistics real time, sitting in our offices to know how many people have voted. We will also be using them to track the ballot papers in terms of their movement from our offices to the voting station so that we know at any given time how many ballot papers each one of those voting stations received. This is what was supposed to be the case in the general election as well, but unfortunately, because of the volumes that we had to process within a short space of time, we had a technical glitch with the process. But we're quite comfortable with the state of readiness of both our staff as well as our VMDs for the by-election tomorrow.
Yeah.
We administered special votes today, where we were visiting people who had applied to be visited at home, as well as those that voted in voting stations, and everything worked as planned.
As a commission, I know that you've been criticised and accused by some political parties for rigging votes in the general elections. In fact, you've even been hauled to the electoral court. How are you going to be doing things differently this time to bring about a sense of even greater confidence with the allegations that are running in the background?
If you recall, the biggest challenge we had was with the live feed of our results system into the dashboards at the results centers in all the 9 provinces and national. This is not a feature in the by-election. So that was the major glitch. But what we always assure people of is that the advantage we have in South Africa is that we count at the voting station. We produce a result at the voting station in duplicate. We leave a copy of the result slips at the door or window of the voting station, so that a day after an election, we are able to go to our results system and you can easily pick up whether there's been any change in the results that came from the station. And this is the results that would have been signed by the agents, posted by political parties and independents at the voting station. So if anything else goes wrong in terms of our systems, we have a trail that we can follow all the way to a voting station where people can, in the comfort of their homes, look at the result slip that came from the voting station and compare that with what is in our system. So that's the assurance that we would like to give voters, that if everything fails in terms of technology, but people have a way of tracing whether you are an independent in this candidate or a political party, you have a copy of the result slip, because we encourage agents of political parties to take pictures of those result slips that they would have signed at the voting station as a verification mechanism when they are back at their party headquarters, and they can check whether anything has changed, whether there is a glitch in the portraying of the results on the dashboard at the results center. It doesn't change the original results that came from a voting station.
And your planning as well, I would imagine, would include some strategies with the police. How have you planned that part?
Oh, absolutely. We don't go into a by-election without receiving some intelligence from the security structures in the province, because they also need to categorize voting stations in terms of high, low, or medium risk, and that informs their deployment strategy. Where we are sitting in all the 7 municipalities where we have by-elections in the province, we have had engagements with the security establishments, and we are quite comfortable with their state of readiness to secure the process. And that process started today when we are administering special votes, both at voting stations and during home visits. We were quite happy with the presence and the visibility of the SAPS in all the areas where we were administering home visits, for example, and we are quite confident with their state of readiness, also because of the numbers that we are dealing with, the 72 voting stations across our province, and they have more than enough members to reinforce in areas where they feel they need to reinforce.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. Wrapping up this discussion, Ntombi Masinga, of course, speaking there as the IEC KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Electoral Officer, saying it's all systems go for the by-elections in KwaZulu-Natal.